Steve is sneezing,
All right.
so he's left the room for a minute.
Okay, that's fine. So I want to welcome everybody to our best practice webinar. Today is Tuesday, August 25th. We have a great presentation for us today, but before we get into that, I'll do just a little bit of housekeeping. So first and foremost, if you haven't already, we'll have you mute your microphone or your phone or speaker until you have a question, and then you're absolutely perfectly able to unmute yourself and ask that question. More on questions to come in just a moment. If you prefer to stay on or off camera, that is absolutely fine as well. We always like to see your smiling faces, but we understand that sometimes your bandwidth requires you to eliminate the video on your camera. I personally am still struggling with some of my internet connections because of the derecho storm that went through my area, so I may occasionally lose video, but I'm still here. I'm connected through my phone today. So want to thank everybody for your patience with that. During our presentation today, there will be natural pauses in which we can ask questions of our presenters. And that can be done a couple of different ways. If you are comfortable, you can certainly unmute yourself and ask the question verbally at that time, but also feel free to use the chat box. And during that time, then during those pauses, I'll be happy to read the questions out of the chat to our presenters today, and we'll get those questions answered for you. Last but not least, I would remind everybody again that this is being recorded, and after the presentation today, we will post this to our website. So if you want to go back and refer to something, or if there's a member of your team that didn't get a chance to watch this and you'd like them to view it, they can do that. We also have all of our archived best practice webinars on that website as well, and it's a really nice way to expand some of that virtual professional development, especially interesting to those of you who are maybe still doing some work from home or this, that, and anything else that's happening in our very strange world right now. So with that being said, I'd like to take a moment to introduce our presenters today. So today we have with us Pat and Steve Schneider, who are the owners and developers of Championship Chess. I'll let them introduce themselves, and then we'll turn it back to you because they would like to have some introduction as well. So Pat and Steve, if you don't mind giving everybody just a quick introduction, and then I'll call people out to introduce themselves to you.
Okay, that sounds very good. I'm Pat, this is Steve, and we've been doing, well, Steve started doing chess with our son when he was about six, and I won't tell you how old he is now because he's older than most of you. And so we started then. We worked with our daughter as well, and we were both teachers in the classroom for quite a few years. And our partners, Jan and Dennis Jones, are also teachers. And we've all been using chess in the classroom. Once we got out of the classroom, we made some decisions about how we could continue helping others put chess into their programs, because we know that it does a good job. We've seen it work with kids, and we wanted to be able to help them continue. So, so that's what happened when we just developed Championship Chess.
I'm Steve, and she said it all. I do more of the work, I guess, developing the chess material, where Pat does more of the technology and the teaching materials. But we make a nice team, excuse me, that way. And we have a lot of fun doing chess with kids.
And we want to know a little bit about you, because as we talk today, we want to try to meet your needs. And I know that it's always nice to have lots and lots of people in a workshop, but it's kind of nice to have just a few, because then we can actually answer your specific concerns, your specific questions, and make this work best for you. So we're happy to know a little bit more about you, who you teach, how you teach, how your after school program looks to be working this year or may start working this year, that sort of thing, and whether or not you've used chess before or if you play chess.
All right. So if it's okay with everybody, I think what I'll do is I'll just simply call you out on the order that you're in on my screen. And I did drop into the chat just exactly what Pat said. So when you introduce yourselves, we'd like to know your name, the site you're with, and the role you play at that site, whether your site is currently in person, virtual, or a hybrid. And then again, do you play chess or have you used chess at your site? And Julie, you are my first person on the screen, please, Julie.
I'm Julie Fetters. I'm with Des Moines Public Schools. I'm at the Hillis Elementary site, and I am the before and after school specialist here. I personally have never played chess. I barely know how to play checkers, but I do have a chess club in my after school program. Well, let me say I did. We are 100% virtual, and my after school programming right now is a little up in the air. But we did have chess offered, and we also ended the year with a chess tournament where all the sites would come here to my site, and we do an elimination tournament by grade, and then the winner of each grade level would compete. So we'd have overall winner, and the kids absolutely loved it. They had a blast doing it, and we always had a huge turnout. So it was a lot of fun. Hopefully someday we'll be able to do those kind of things again.
Yes. Thank you, Julie. We appreciate that. Billy, I have you next on my screen. Oh, Billy, you're muted.
Good morning, I'm Billy Stone. I'm in Des Moines, Iowa. I'm with Oak Ridge Neighborhood Services, and we are an after-school program. And if you're familiar with Oak Ridge, we are an after-school program that lives basically in a community. And our students basically come from Des Moines Public Schools, Edmonds, Callanan, and Roosevelt. And we are virtual and in person. We have a limited amount of young people who come in. We have had chess. We have a teacher who is a great chess player, and he comes in and he has chess activities and programs with our kiddos. And I think that's about it. Oh, I'm the education director for the youth department.
Thank you.
Thanks, Billy.
Yes, ma'am.
Brian, I have you next.
Hi, I'm Brian Gonzalez. I'm in Des Moines. I am with the Boys and Girls Club of Central Iowa. I am currently a grants and data coordinator. As of recently, our organization took on summer programming, like in person. Obviously, we were very limited given the circumstances around, COVID. But as of right now, we're closed, and we're kind of just waiting a little bit to hear from, Des Moines Public Schools, the whole thing with like the lawsuit they have going on. So we're just kind of waiting to see if some things clear up and see how we're gonna implement club, once things get figured out. But no, personally, I've never played chess. I'm sure I wouldn't be too good at it, but yeah.
He might be surprised.
And only computers play chess well.
Oh, that's great. Thank you, Brian. Nikki, I have you next.
I had to unmute myself, sorry there. I'm Nikki Clausen, I'm with the Council Bluffs School District. This is my first year as the program director. I've been here for 5 years as a coordinator. So we have a really awesome chess program in our high school programs, and it's been going on for the past 4 years for almost every day during the school year. The guy that leads it is very passionate about chess, which is amazing because I don't know anything about chess. So yeah, and we try to get them to 4 tournaments a year. And this year, because we are offering hybrid, we're still able to offer programs. We just will maybe have less kids throughout the week. We're still offering it Tuesday through Friday at our high school. One of our high schools, sorry.
So do you work only with the high schools, or do you work with younger kids as well?
Yes, we are in 6 of our elementary schools, 2 high schools, and 1 middle school. So we have 9 programs in our district currently. And I do remember, this wasn't one of my schools back then, but we did do something where we tried to partner the high school students with our elementary students.
Yes.
And the high school kids come into our elementary program and teach those kids, you know, just how to play chess and just like kind of little things piece by piece. And we did that for a couple months as well.
Okay, that's good. A mentoring program is nice for young kids, no matter what they're getting taught.
Absolutely.
All right, thanks, Nikki. Vic, I have you next.
Good morning. I'm Vic Jarvis, Iowa Department of Education,
We know.
and I oversee the whole 21st Century program here in Iowa. And I have been playing chess since before I went to school. And, you know, it was sitting in on a session, championship chess, a few years back that I started doing a little bit of research and discovered quite a few things about chess. Basically, it meets about a dozen Common Core standards in math. And it's really good for teaching kids to think things through before they, you know, before they act out. And this can have a positive emotional effect on kids. In Des Moines, when they have their tournament, you know, I see a lot of kids who have office referrals and they sit quiet for an hour and concentrate and are playing chess. I mean, you know, that's almost like a magic pill for schools to get kids interested in things. I highly recommend the movie Brooklyn Castle. I even met the principal at a meeting a few years back, and you know, chess has amazing things that it can do for kids. And in Europe, some of the countries, for example, Poland, it's part of their regular elementary curriculum now. And since they instituted chess, their math scores have skyrocketed, and they're now ahead of the United States in terms of their PISA math scores. Imagine that. So,
All right.
It's always a pleasure to hear from you, Vic. Always a pleasure to hear you talk chess.
thanks.
Nice.
It's the right thing to do
Okay.
for kids.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Vic. The last person I have on the call today is Beth.
Muted here. Beth Christopher, I'm up in Waukon for Al McKee Community District. I taught for 35 years, and this is my 10th year starting with the after school program. Since Barb retired, I'm a co-director with Virginia Kurth, and we have the middle school programming. We do have chess from time to time, different programs, different years, different parts. Our school is in person this year. Right now we're doing outside activities, but in the past we've used our guidance counselor who's retired, but we're hoping maybe we can get him to come back this fall and do some work with us again. And also one of our instructional coaches works in the program and does a chess club for us also. So Virginia and I don't play chess, but we get people in that know how to.
That's great. Okay. So Steve and Pat, that's your group today. So I'm going to let you take it away, and I'm going to mute myself, but continue to watch the chat box for questions. So thank you.
Thank you. We put this up just because we thought this is how you would see us if we had gone to your conference, if y'all had been able to have such a thing. And that's the way we usually are. This time we're in our home at our computer, and so are you. But what we're trying to do is think about a virtual world. And so the world of chess is our virtual world. And so what we want to be able to talk to you a little bit about, and I think because of time, I want to make sure that we get to the actual activity parts. So we're going to look a little bit. This is Vic Jarvis's riddle that we always like to use because he talks about how it is a STEM activity. And my favorite part of it is you could buy hundreds of these for less than the cost of one iPad. So yes, chess is a lot less expensive. And in usual times, it's just a board that kids can sit across from each other with. But now it's really got to be one that's online for them. For those of you who are being virtual, that's what we're going to be as well. And this is all the good reasons for putting it into after school programming. It's active and engaging. Yes, it hits the standards in STEM, but it also really builds relationships. Just like one of you talked about the students in the high school who had teams and they were able to really go back even to teach younger kids. They become a group. It's a real good solidifier for them. And all of us have a lot of different cultures in our communities, and we want to make sure that we reach out to all of them. And chess does that. Anyone and everyone can play chess. Makes you feel good, behavioral health. It also changes your attitudes and how you act. So lots of good things can happen. Critical thinking is, of course, part of chess. Everyone thinks that specifically because you have to think about every move you make. And whether you're planning ahead and whether you're deductive or inductive reasoning, all of those things we'll talk about today. And I think really important is that visualization and the spatial visualization. And when we do our activities, you'll see just that happening. And these are some of the things that it will improve: collaborative, competitive challenges, math, reading, problem solving. And what Vic talked about when he said that it can improve math scores and math skills, it truly does do that, not by the fact that you're teaching numbers. It's not that you're actually teaching arithmetic, but you're actually teaching thinking and problem solving that should be part of your math curriculum. So those kinds of things are what we want to build up in kids. And we do it by going into the world of chess. And I'm going to take y'all there. And I have to do this thing that tells me, this is what you're going to tell me if I'm doing it wrong, Crystal. Okay, so I'm going to go in to our actual, whoop. Here I'm going to change screens. Let's see. Whoop. I think I have sort of. There we go. Now let's see if we're sharing the right screen. New share.
So Pat, it looks like you're sharing the PowerPoint. Oh, and yes, we are perfect. We're on your website. Thank you.
Okay. We should have done back and forth before. Okay. Now we're inside of the world of chess. We're actually on the website, and we're going to go into the world of chess so that we can talk to you about how kids actually go in and what you can relate to with them. And so if we enter the world of chess, every student has a username and a password. And they log in. They should log in. Let's see what happened over here. There we come. Okay. They log in and they go into the world of chess, and this is where they all meet. This is the Hall of Kings, and they're welcomed. They'll see their name up on the board. They'll also be able to see their avatar, and this is one of the things that they can change. Kids like to make sure that it looks more like them so that we have some different skin tones, we have different outfits, and they say whether they're boy or girl. And we also have a podium, and at this point, any group will look at themselves and they can see how they're doing according to the rest of the kids in the group. And it looks like Stephen needs to work a little bit harder. But the most important thing in this room is the door, because it takes you out to the world of chess. And this is where we'll start talking about how we actually teach chess. And it's very different from just saying, here are all the pieces and here are how they move and now let's play, because a lot of you may have learned that way or someone tried to teach you that way. And since we heard that most of you don't play, it didn't work. So let's talk about how we do teach it. So let's go into the pawn hall, which is the very first hall. And let's look at our first bookcase of information. We want kids to really understand the board and how it works, the understanding of the algebraic grid. So we have videos that will show them that. We'll talk about naming the squares. And I want to, the videos are fine, and I'm not going to take time for that, but you click on, you get into a video. So the kids have access to all those teaching materials. So does the teacher. But what we really want to do is look at the board. So let's go back to our table of contents and get ready for challenges. And we'll look at the board a bit.
One of the things that I tell the students, particularly new students, is that you must always play on a board that has the algebraic grid, the letters and numbers. Chess is a really visual game, a spatial game, and they need to know where C4 is and F7, and they can't do that. When our son started playing chess, it was illegal to have the letters and numbers on the board. So we now take advantage of that. And this is the first test. Go ahead.
This is the first test, but what we will have talked about in those videos and when we're talking to kids is that understanding of the center squares, these four in the center, as well as an understanding of that grid. So you can tell me an answer if you want to undo your mute, and you just type in the answer. In the grid, you always have the letter first, so it's
Or you can think about it as the X and Y coordinate in algebra, and you go out on the horizontal, and so it's the letter and then the number. Alphabetical, you know, letter comes before number.
D4 and so forth. So kids are able to start looking at that board and understanding it, and they can do that on their own, or they can do that when you've got a board in front of you just talking about it, because the important part of that is to really start seeing that whole board, that all of these squares have a meaning, and we'll start talking more about that as we go on. And you'll go through some of these and it'll get you out of there. And if we close this book, you'll see that there are other books within here. And this is the game we're going to talk about. These are the pawn versus pawn games. And these are games that are true in-game kinds of study, but we don't put a lot of pieces on the board. Once again, there's videos and activities to do. And there are puzzles that you can work on. And we're going to play some of the games.
We talk about not only how to set the board up and how the pieces move and capture, but how they work. How they work is really important. So we can, as you see here, there's 7 different games, and they're all pawns against pawns. Pull one up, Pat. And there's no king on the board. It's broken down to its simplest form. So here we have 1 pawn against 1 pawn. Now, of course, children need to learn how the pawns move. White always sets up their 8 pawns on the 2nd rank, and black sets up their 8 pawns on the 7th rank. We're not going to start with 8 pawns against 8 pawns. We're going to start with 1 against 1. We build it up step at a time. On the first move, pawns, if they're not blocked, can move 1 or 2 squares. And this is a race. We want to see about getting to the other side first. So we would move, our white pawn goes first, white moves 2 squares, black moves 2 squares, and what has happened?
It says that we've solved the puzzle because this is a stalemate. And stalemate in chess is a complicated kind of concept, except when you only have 2 pieces on the board. Because what it's really saying is black made its move, so it's white move, but white cannot move. Anything can block a pawn. And so the white pawn has no moves, so therefore it's a stalemate. In a regular game, that's a tie game. So it's really letting you know at the very beginning, we start teaching concepts and vocabulary that they use throughout their chess play.
Way back in the, I would say the 15, 16, 1700s, If there was a stalemate, whoever forced the stalemate was the loser because you messed up this beautiful game of chess.
Okay, and now we're going to look one more time at another game. This time we're going to do adjacent, Steve.
Okay. Adjacent is really important. Now, again, the winner is the first one to either get a pawn to the other side or capture the opponent's pawns. And what we're teaching here is an in-game technique, which is the power of the outside pass pawn. Now, we didn't cover the naming of the pawns, but we have a C pawn and a D pawn for white, and an E and an F pawn for black. If we move our D pawn, it's going to end up next to a black pawn, which will capture it, and white will not win. So for white to win, they just simply move the outside pass pawn 2 squares, and there's no way that black can get through. But white had to move 2. If white only moved 1, it could be different.
And these games all have rules like that. They all have strategies that you're using. We didn't explain, I think, before that pawns capture diagonally forward. So if I move my white pawn here, the black pawn could capture me. The E pawn could capture the D pawn. So the idea, the concept, the object of this game is to get to the other side first. So it doesn't matter what black does. We're going to continue moving forward and win.
So again, it's a lot of spatial skills that typically young children do not have. It's really important to build these skills up.
That's a glitch that we're working on, and I apologize. Here we go. This one is one where we really have our first strategies. And the nice thing to say about this one is that no matter who you're playing, if you play black, you'll win.
If you know the strategy. So it's like a 2 or 3 step strategy. We're playing black here. And the first thing we do is we copy. So we copy white's move. White moves the pawn 2 squares. Black moves the pawn 2 squares. And we keep on copying. White moves 1. So now the second step is to capture. So we capture, as Pat said, by moving diagonally forward. And now we have 2 ways to win. And a lot of players want to win by capturing. So what we try to stress in our teaching is that if you really want to be a chess player, think about winning by getting the pawn to the other side first. The pawn is the weakest piece on the board. It's worth 1 point. The queen is most powerful. So if you get a pawn to the other side of the board, you can promote it to a queen, and the queen, most powerful, it's sort of like checkmate, game is over. Black wins. So they're meant to be drills. Every sport has drills. These are drills that build up skills.
Oops, sorry. Are there any questions at this point about pawn games?
We didn't tell you how the pawns move, but I think you got it from what we did.
Okay.
The students take more time going through it, particularly if they're brand new.
And each of these has information that you'll want to have. And once again,
Now,
these are
this
the
is
skills within.
This is the second pawn card. There are 3 pawn cards.
And we have pawn and piece games as well as pawn versus pawn games. And we're going to do one of those online. Let me go out of here.
Now,
And
the most powerful piece is the queen. It's worth 9 points. The second most powerful piece are the rooks. They start off in the corner, and they are worth 5 points. So we play the rook against 5 pawns. Now, again, in chess, white goes first. So what students are learning here is that rooks do not have very much power in front of connected pawns.
And rooks move according to where they stand, you can tell. They move horizontally and they move vertically.
And as far as they want, as long as they're not blocked. So the best first move is to move the rook to the 7th rank. And I call this the Pac-Man attack, where it's really attacking all the pawns. You can only take one at a time, but it's still leading to take them all. many beginners will start off by saying, oh my goodness, my C pawn's being attacked, I must move it. That would be a big mistake. Pawns are very weak and they need to have a helper. And if the C pawn moves, then the rook's going to take the D pawn and there's no helper. And the game will be quickly won by the rook. So, can we go back?
We can.
Okay. So there's several strategies that come in here. The rook comes down attacking the pawns. Let's move the E pawn instead. And we move it 2 because we want to get to the other side. Now in this game, we have to get to the other side safely. Not just get there, but get there without being captured. So the rook takes the pawn, and now we bring up the F pawn as a helper. So this makes the pawns a little bit better. The rook takes a pawn. And there are many things you can do here. You do not want to move the G pawn 2 squares because then you're setting up a Pac-Man attack again. That would not be good. You can move the pawn 1 square. And now the rook has to move to attack the pawn. And it's better for the rook to attack behind the pawn. Rooks have very little power in front of pawns, but a lot of power behind them. Well, we're going to lose that G pawn, so let's just move one of our center pawns, okay? And the rook takes the G pawn, and let's move the pawn that's the closest to the other side. That's how we win. So let's move the F pawn again. Now, here's where often, if players don't know how to use the rook, they don't know what to do. But you go behind the most advanced pawn. And the pawn has no helper, so we bring a helper up. We bring up, okay. So now if the rook takes the F pawn, pawn's captured diagonally, the E pawn would take the rook. So that doesn't work. But what the rook does is it moves up to the 4th rank where it sets up a fork. The rook is attacking both pawns. Whichever pawn moves, white's going to take the F pawn. Well, let's move the F pawn.
And that's another very simple way to teach a concept, which is fork. It means you're attacking more than one piece at one time. So the rook that can move horizontally or vertically is attacking both of these pieces.
So we're going to move the F pawn. It no longer has a helper, so the rook takes the pawn.
Stuck.
Uh-oh.
My mouse is stuck. Hold on. There we go.
Okay. So now it's black's move. So it only has one pawn, it moves it forward. So class, what does white do here? The pawn's attacking the rook. The rook's got to move somewhere. So just tell me what rank it's going to move to. Is it going to stay on the 2nd rank? It's going to go to the 3rd, the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, or 8th. What rank will the rook move to? It doesn't move diagonally. What rank would it go to? Any suggestions?
No chats? Remember we talked about being able to attack from behind. And so we are probably going to go back rather than forward. And what you're going to see when you see kids play is they can even do things like that. And do we know what that is?
It's now black's move, and anything can block a pawn. The pawn can't move. It's a stalemate.
So that very powerful rook lost to a very weak pawn. All of these concepts are things that are taught within our materials and the things that we want kids to understand. And it's the strategy and how pieces work that's really more important than just memorizing how pieces move. And all kids can do that. All kids can memorize how they move. You want to be able to have them working hands-on or computer on or however they do it now, so that they can start getting a sense of how they can use those pieces in a real game and where they can go from there.
And we have 16 of these games that they can play against the computer to build up their skills.
Okay, let's go back in here. Let me see if I'm doing this right again. Crystal can tell me if I'm not. Do we have it? What are you seeing, Crystal?
You see the 6.
I'm still seeing the website.
Okay, you're in the website though. You're not still seeing the rook, right?
You see the 6 item?
We see the open book that says watch and
Okay.
learn queen and pawn games and so
Okay.
on and so forth.
Thank you.
Good.
Okay. I'm going to take you a little bit faster than you, of course, would with a student. But we want to just give you a sense of the different things that you can do and how you can help kids go further and go at their own pace. So if you were going in, for example, into the third bookshelf, we would already start talking about check, checkmate, and stalemate, and back rank mate, and all of those pieces. So those are important things for kids to know. And it's a great way for them to do it step by step on their own. And if we want to talk about setting up a mate or recognizing a checkmate, let's look at a couple of puzzles. Let me see if I can get us up here right.
Now, we've only learned about the rook and the pawn so far. So when we look at checkmate, we're going to need to know about more of the pieces and how they work. Checkmate is rather complicated.
Okay, we're going to set up a position on the board, and I have to make sure you're seeing this. Let me share. Okay. Okay, now you should be seeing an empty board and pieces by it. And we're going to talk a little bit about setting up and seeing a checkmate. So we're going to have a black king in the corner, a white king on the F rank file. We're going to have a white bishop, and we're going to have, what do you want? A rook. A white rook.
I'm sorry.
Black rook. Okay.
So you know how the rook moves, but you don't know the others. Bishops only move on diagonals. So the white bishop only goes on white squares. The bishop is attacking the king. Now, the white king and the black king. Kings can go one square at a time in any direction, but you can never put the king in danger. Well, right now, the king's in danger because the bishop can go as far as it wants on the diagonal, and the bishop is attacking, the white bishop's attacking the black king. The king cannot move to the side because it would be moving to a square where the white king can capture it. And of course, the king cannot move on the diagonal forward because both the king and the bishop are taken. So the king is in check, but you know how the rook moves. The rook can move horizontally, and it can move over and block. So there's a blocking. The bishop can take the rook. The bishop takes the rook. The king cannot move to the left or take the bishop, but the king can now move forward and escape. It is no longer check or checkmate. So we do very simple puzzles to build up the chess skills.
And let's look at another one, and we'll learn about another piece.
Okay, you know how the pawn moves. You know how the bishop moves. You know how the king moves. Now we have a knight. Knights are really tricky. The young kids love the knights. Knights, this particular knight is on a dark square. When it moves, it will move to a light square. It changes the color of the square every time. So.
And it moves like an L.
It moves in an L shape, absolutely.
And we have songs that tell you how to do that. It's called the knight slide. And the knight goes 2 squares forward and slides to the side, or 2 squares forward and slides to the side. It can go 2 squares here and slide to the side. So however you move that knight, it always looks like an L. So knowing that it moves like an L, what do you know now? Can anybody tell me? What can it do? If it moves like an L here, it captures the pawn, it captures the bishop. And once it's caught the bishop, that broke up that checkmate, that check possibility. So we've done one by blocking the check. This one we captured the piece that is checking. And now let's see if we've got another way of doing this. Okay.
Okay, the bishop's attacking the king. That's good.
Square away.
No,
The camera. All right.
that's good.
Okay.
Let's do checkmate.
All right. We're gonna do it.
The bishop is attacking the king. The king has no moves. And there's nothing that can interpose or block. The pawns only move forward. They can't move to the side to block. The bishop's attacking the king. The black king has no moves. This is checkmate. Game is over.
And all of these kinds of puzzles are what you'll find inside of the world of chess and what kids can do. And like we said, we're pushing you so that we can show you different things. But this is all in the pawn hall. And with young kids, it would take you probably, if you're just doing it once a week, an hour a week, it would take you quite a few weeks to get them to this place. With older kids, they'll go faster.
And if they already know how to play, they will see it quickly. But it's important that they see these skills.
Let me go into another changing screen. Hold on. Sure. Go back in here. Okay, what did you want to do?
Well, we can look at the queen or not. We can move ahead.
Okay, let's move ahead.
Okay.
We're doing all of these games and things inside of the pawn hall, and that's the very beginning. But we want to go further today to let you see more of the things that we can do. So we're going to go into the bishop hall, and you can see that there's a flag flying. So that means that's the direction I'm going. I haven't completed things inside of the bishop hall, so there's no flag on my knight hall. So I'm going to go in here, but I can go into the knight hall to study. I just can't take any of the little quizzes in there.
We finished all three of the tests and the pawns, so we're now in the bishop. And in the bishop hall, we've passed the first card, the first bishop card, and we're working on the second one.
But let's look at what that first bishop card has in it, because it has a lot of information that you want, and especially if you have kids who are players, you want them to start understanding the concept of an opening play and why openings are important and how you can use them. So once again, we have videos they can watch and activities that they can pull down. And we also have things for them to do. And this is a study of what the best first move is and why. And we have a video that shows us that. Then we have an activity that reinforces what that video is about. So let's do a quick look at this.
I like to prove by arithmetic, keep it simple, what the most powerful first move is. I don't know of another chess book that talks about the most powerful first move. Chess players try to be careful and say, well, you can start with the E pawn, the D pawn, the C pawn. You can do anything you want. Well, that's true, particularly if you're a master.
And if you look at the board, you can see that all the pawns can possibly move, and the knight, because it jumps, can also move. But none of the other pieces can move in the beginning of a game. So there are 20 first moves.
Possible first moves. And the most powerful first move, and we determine power by what kind of pieces get in the game. Now, we haven't talked about how the queen moves, but we'll do that on this first move. The most powerful first move is E4. And many beginners just naturally start off doing E4 because that's what so many people do. Now, when you move the E pawn, you want to move it 2 squares. The pawn is attacking 2 white squares on the 5th rank.
It's also in the center of the board.
Yes, but the power comes from what has opened up. The bishop at F1 has 5 new squares it can go to. Now, we didn't say they were good moves, but they're moves. So there are 5 moves the bishop can go to. Now, the queen moves horizontally, vertically, and diagonally. So on the diagonal, it has 4 new moves. The knight at G1 had 2 moves to start with. Remember, there were 20 moves. But now it has a new move at E2. Now, you wouldn't want to do that on the second move because that would be what we call a roadblock. We don't want to slow down the development. We want to build it. So with the bishop, the queen and the knight, there are 10 new moves. We call that power of 10. Now the king has a new move, but what we talk about here is kings and rooks do not come out in the opening. So,
And then we look at other moves and see what their power might be. And does anyone have an idea about what the move for the A pawn is? What has it opened up on the board?
let's open the rook.
But rooks and kings do not come out in the opening.
So it's power 0.
Let's see if that's right.
Yes.
No power at all. So what we've not, when you've had that opening move and you haven't been able to open up any new moves, then that's a weak move. And you'd be surprised, lots and lots of kids start off moving those side pawns. And they do it for a couple of reasons. They figure that if they open up where the king is, that that's dangerous. But actually that gives them the power to attack. And it also, I know this is going to sound sexist, but the truth is that when I've watched girls play, they often want to be very defensive so that they're always trying to keep their king comfortably hidden and safe. So when you talk to kids, you want to make sure that they're understanding that they're on the attack. They need to be aggressive. They need to push forward. And so this little side move doesn't do them any good at all, because black could easily then take the center, and that's where they want to be.
Another thing we talk about, and we build it up one step at a time, is that in the beginning of the game, a player should try to only move the C, D, and E pawns. So obviously you would not want to move the A and the H pawns. Now, you can move other pawns depending on how the game goes.
Okay, just another quick look, because our time is getting short and I want to be able to get back to giving you a little bit more information and have you ask some questions. In this same area, we'll talk about our first openings and opening play. We also will talk about in-game play. And in-game play is really important. What you'll find with kids is often what our coaches call pushing plastic. At the end, they'll be chasing kings around the board and they'll never get to an end. The bell rings, or maybe in this case, in virtual world, mom says, okay, you need to turn off the computer, it's time to go. Whatever it is, those things will happen. So things end. But I wanted to show you just quickly an end game. Oh, hold on. Well, not coming up. 2 bricks, there it is. All right, and we'll do a quick look at this and then we'll have some time for questions as well.
Oftentimes when beginners play chess, it's not correct, but it works most of the time. It does lead to stalemates, but most of the time, the player who's winning wants to capture all of the opponent's pieces. That's what's happened here. So black has, of course, got a king and 2 rooks, and he's wiped out all the white pieces. So how do we checkmate here? That was rhetorical.
Oh, the way we checkmate is to make sure that we get that king to the back of the board. So what shall we move to make that happen?
Okay, so we've jumped into end games. What we want to do is what we call a cutoff move. We want to prevent the king from ever getting up to the 4th rank. So we move our rook down to the 4th rank, and the king cannot move to the 4th rank. Now, if we'd moved the other rook to the 4th rank, the king would have taken it. That wouldn't have been good. So
we do a step-by-step trying to help kids understand end games as well. So each of the things that you see in the inside of the world of chess guides kids one step at a time into different ways of looking at chess. And then we also do play inside the world. While I'm getting to that point, does someone have a question? Are there any questions?
Feel free to unmute, or again, use that chat box if you have questions for our presenters today.
Okay, in the world of chess, we have an area where students can play each other, or they can play against the computer. In either case, they can have the games emailed to their teacher, their sponsor, their coach, and also to their parents, so that just like as they earn the different levels of passing the pawn cards to bishop cards, the parents also get emails there. Let's look at where it says play game against computer, and we go into the first bookcase. In that bookcase, we have all kinds of openings that students play. And so they can pick one, and the one we usually start with is right here. The third one, it's the Queen's Raid. And what we're doing, you see the pieces have already moved. It's not move one, because what we're doing is we're not playing random chess. We're focusing in on what's being taught. And we're at the fifth move for white in this opening. And the fifth move is moving the knight from G1 to E2. Black then makes a move. Now, the game, it's a training game. It will end at move 22. It won't go to move 50 or 60. The intent is that beginners need this practice in the opening, and they should not be playing for a half an hour or 45 minutes.
And what I like about it is this gives the kids a sense of, if I were playing in a tournament, if I were playing other kids, they might do anything. I don't know what their move is. When we teach an opening, we teach the main line. And so Black cooperates, or the opponent cooperates, because we want to show them what is those moves, the best moves going forward. But that's not what happens in a tournament. What happens in a tournament could be almost anything. So we want kids to get a comfortable feel for this and a comfortable way of being able to be in a game and feel comfortable playing against it and say, oh, well, I don't know what to do with that one. Let's restart it and try another way. And so they're in control of the game, and they're able to continue that way. So this gives them a lot of opportunity for improving their chess play. We also have a game area where they can play against players. So if you have a group of students, then you're able to set up a play for them, so that they would come in, one of them will host a game, and then they'll be waiting for someone to come in and click yes, and then they start the game. So once again, you've got kids playing, and at that point, they'll be able to email the games, and that email goes to their parents, goes to their coach or the administrator, whoever is working through the materials with them. And then you're able to talk about those games. So whether you're virtually there or actually in class, you can see the play and be able to see how kids are doing and improving.
And the players who have signed up for chess can also play from home. Of course, if they're virtual, they're playing from home anyway. But the point being is that it's not just an hour, excuse me, where the coach comes in and does chess with them. Of course, they can, even when the coach comes in, they can go home and play chess. But here they can go immediately into the training area. They can get trained, and their games can be looked at and analyzed.
And these are all of the ways that kids can talk, the ways that are the activities that are inside of the materials, so that kids can start talking about forks and the pieces and moves. These are looking at the checkmates and so forth. And what happens here is that as students go through the materials, they achieve cards. And these cards explain how they're doing, tells them what they've accomplished, and they're cards for every one of the pieces. This is more about openings. I want to give some time for questions and discussion. If you would, this is what kids see. Let's go back out of here. I hope I didn't make you dizzy going that fast. But if you're an administrator, you're able to set up your own students. You're able to put them into the world of chess. You get them their own username and password. All of those pieces are set up for you, and you've got everything you need. Do we have some questions? We must have done a really good job. You have no questions. Chess is a complicated subject. Do you have any questions?
Okay.
Again, feel free to unmute. Billy would like to know if there's a cost to this program.
There is. The program is set up so that it's a cost per student, and you can get it by time. And I think that's one of the things I did not have up here. Let me see if I can find one of it quickly. Talk among yourselves, and I'll get that. And I'll get this up. Steve, talk a little bit.
You mentioned the tournament. I don't know if they're playing any tournaments now, but most of our students at schools we work with, there was recently a national tournament. It was all online. I think there were 2,000 children who came into it. Chess Online has one problem. There's cheating. So they have the anti-cheating software to make sure that if something looks suspicious, they actually can watch every game because everyone is on Zoom and they can see all the games. But there are lots of tournaments, and many of them are free. And better than having to drive from one place to another to get to a tournament, you're at home and you set up. I've also found, and Pat's got our stuff about ready, but I've also found that in teaching chess, the kids get a lot more out of it from the online. Typically coming to an after-school chess program, it's been the end of the school day, they want a little social, and there's no way that players should, if you've got 15 children in a chess club, that they can be talking between themselves while the coach is teaching. Online, they can chat between themselves and still pay attention to the coach. It does not disrupt anybody. So they get the social and they get the training. And with something like the World of Chess, they can get the training 24/7.
Okay, this is the pricing. What we've done is the World of Chess is all the activities and materials that we talked about just now, and including all the videos. It's if you ever saw us at one of your conferences, we had 4 books, and I'll put my hands up trying to show you. You put the 4 books together, they were about that thick, and that was the material that was that you could purchase. But now we've taken all those materials plus a lot more, because when you're online, you can make a lot of changes, and we put it all online. Teachers access it, students access it, and even parents access it. So everyone has all the information that we've had, whether it's the basics, openings, end games, tactics, all of that, and it's a continually growing library. So that's what you have access to. And what we've tried to do is make it inexpensive as we can for numbers of students, because I know that you have different numbers of students in your groups. The nice thing is that it's really, when you purchase it, you're purchasing a number of slots. So that means if you purchased up to 20 students for the first 3 months of the school year, or whatever 3 months you want, what you're really saying is, I have 20 slots. And if some students drop in or out, come in and out, you can change those students. So you've got the slots, you do with them as you please. And we do have some online classes as well, which are weekly classes. They're archived. People can use them as videos as well as coming in online live. So this is what we do have set. And Crystal, I'll send this to you if you want to put I never thought about the purchasing stuff. I'm obviously not the marketing person in our group, so I will make sure you have this handout.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's greatly appreciated.
Okay.
Do we have any other questions today? And again, feel free to unmute or drop those into the chat.
We are available if questions come up. Of course, they can get to you or they can send to us. We also are happy to let different teachers or after-school people, if they would like to sample it out with their own children or with a child in their group, or they want to try it themselves to see how it works.
Yes, if you want to send us an email or send it to Crystal and Crystal will get to us. And I will set you up in a free area so that for the next month or so, you can check it out and see how it works. You can also check it out with your students because it doesn't matter who uses the sign-in I give you. You want them to see if it works for them. If you want to watch and see if your students work with it well, this will give you a time to try that out. And especially if you're doing virtual teaching, it's an interesting way that you know that you're introducing things virtually, and then they can virtually play chess. So it's an outreach that I think can work well in this confused time.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so if there are no further questions, we want to thank Pat and Steve for their time today. So thank you for that. Again, if you have further questions, you can absolutely reach out to me and I'm happy to make connections for you. And with that being said, I'm going to now stop the recording.